Since the beginning of time in memoriam, there have existed three most vile sects of people in this world, whose goal it was to destroy all humanity holds dear. Never content with what they had, they always sought more in the form of migration and sacking the people in the local area. This eventually brought them near the borders of the once great Roman Empire, where they would sack and raid both the Romans and the neighboring Germanic tribes. Though Rome would eventually fall, and they understood that they had to up their games to compete in this now decentralized and competitive world. Both this and the lack of a large economic base nearby brought on their flight from the European mainland to establish a new base on the island of Great Britain, uniting their three tribes of the Angles, Jutes, and Saxons to become even stronger, with a new look outwards to the sea, becoming the Anglo-Saxons in the process. Though before long, neighboring peoples would hear about this disastrous turn of events, bringing with them the raids and invasions of the Viking Age, the most honorable people of Scandinavia wanting to save the world from their evil. This culminated in 1066 with a double assault on the Anglo-Saxons by both the Norwegians and the Normans, though this only infuriated the tribes even more. In the end, the Anglo-Saxons lost, but to the Normans and not the Norwegians. This, though seeming fine at first, would become an error that would doom the world, as the new French ruling class wasn't as tough as it turns out was needed, eventually becoming more and more unified with the tribes they had tried to suppress. With this, no one was able to oppose the now powerful kingdom and destroy it before it was too late, and the English would go on to found an empire in the name of quote-unquote civilizing every other nation in the world to their weak and girlish customs, and creating a duller world in the process. This brings me to the topic of today's video, Neon Genesis Evangelion. You might be thinking that these two subjects are highly unrelated, and you're probably pretty confused right about now. Well, fret not, for after this video is over, it should all make sense to you. Now, without any further ado, let's just jump right into it. Now let's start with establishing the ground on which to build my case here. The truth of Evangelion is that the angels are not the bad guys that they are assumed to be. No, it is rather the protagonists and their way of living that is. For why within the story would they be called angels if that's not important? And yes, I have heard about the director Anno saying that the religious symbolism in his show does not have any meaning at all. What? Do you think he knows his show better than me? And if you want to go ahead and say that angels aren't supposed to look like what they do in the show, then you clearly have not seen some of the more out there angels from the Bible. Now, where was I? Ah yes. The angels' purpose always seems to be that of the destruction of everyone and everything where the characters live. And then I ask you, when have angels also been recorded to do such things? Well, in the city of Sodom, of course. It is therefore clear that the inhabitants of Tokyo 3, and the whole Earth for that matter, due to the sheer scale of the second impact, must have offended God in some way or another. Evidence of this is as clear as day, with Misato always wearing her cross necklace, despite clearly being an adulteress. This serves as a clear point that most pick up on, and only serves to draw us into the larger theme of the show of humanity acting against God's will. The city of Tokyo 3 seems to be living in excess, despite being the headquarters of Nerve, as one is able to just have a penguin as a pet. Clearly mankind took the destruction of Antarctica, no matter how sad it might be, the wrong way. But why did the second impact happen if only Tokyo 3 is supposed to be the new Sodom? Well, what is clearly going on here is that the angels are out to push the reset button on humanity, like with the Great Flood. But as humanity survived the second impact and resisted the angels, they have had to focus their attention on Nerve, the organization set out to stop the angels, before they can finish the job. The reason behind this is all in that the world had become too influenced by the Anglos and their systems that they set up to stay within God's plan. The proof of this is all in that penguin I mentioned earlier that Misato has waddling around her flat. You see, The penguin as a gift is a symbol of the Anglos. Something similar happened to a certain penguin in the Edinburgh Zoo when it was arranged to be a lance corporal in the Norwegian King's Guard. Now, am I saying that this penguin alone shows us that the Anglos are to blame for the events of Ava? No, of course not. But what I am saying, much like what I said earlier about Misato and her adultery, is that it is put in here as a clear subject to draw the audience into the more underlying themes of Evangelion, and serves as a catalyst for them to spot more of these and tie them all together. One of the said other ties to the Anglos is the organization of Nerve itself. For though it might claim to be a German name, you don't really pronounce it much different than you would the English word. The caption to the organization is also in English, which shows us that even after the Second Impact, the lingua franca, the world order, and the main enemy of God is still that of the Anglo. The meaning of the description can also be interpreted as an act of defiance against God. God's in his heaven, all's right on earth. This clearly states that God's interference with the human race should be kept to a minimum, wanting him to stay in his heaven so all can be right on earth, and they wouldn't need to still be at war with him. Also, who the heck names the city Tokyo 3 if not the same people that would name a newly discovered land for settlers New England? Ugh. Of course, in the end, God wins, and the world is reset with Shinji and Asuka as the new Adam and Eve, having been thrown out of their man-made paradise, only to be thrown into this new world. As Shinji and Asuka both had been an integral part of the previous Anglo system, they now have the chance to redeem themselves and mankind in the eyes of God, undoubtedly proving an inspiring tale of God's forgiveness for future generations. So as you can clearly see, Evangelion is ripe with religious imagery for a reason. The characters of the show are in a war against God because of the ruinous effects that the Anglos had on the world, and are trying their best to resist his will. It's all connected, and I do hope that I have done a good job of explaining how it all is so. If not, then fine. Continue living in your fantasy world, and let our future history turn into that of Evangelions. You have been warned.